I hate, I reject your festivals. I don't enjoy your joyous assemblies. If you bring me your entire burned offerings and gifts of food, I won't be pleased. I won't even look at your offerings of well-fed animals. Take away the noise of your band. I won't listen to the melody of your guitars or your basses or your pianos. The next verse, right after that, is this one. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. So the verse that Martin Luther King made famous in his I Have a Dream speech on the National Mall, that verse about justice rolling down like waters, that verse comes at the end of 5 long chapters of Amos voicing God's anger and God's wrath at the wailing of the poor in Israel's community, at captives who have been cast aside unjustly. So Martin Luther King knew that those in his church-going audience would know that that verse about justice rolling down like waters, it wasn't a happy or an easy dream. It was a dream that comes at the end of this long passage about God's wrath. Earlier this fall, I was sitting with Dewayne for about 45 minutes, just talking with him as we waited for a presentation that he and Brian were going to do to a group of law students to begin. And a long time ago, I served as a prison chaplain. I worked on death row. I met with prisoners in solitary confinement. Like Brian, I have a really good BS radar, which is why you can't control me. I have a really good BS radar, and my first takeaway from interacting with Dewayne was that I had a hard time fathoming how anyone could fathom that he did what he was accused of. And my second takeaway from talking with Dewayne, was how overwhelmed I was by his sense of forgiveness. Forgiveness against all of the wrong and injustice that has been done to him by lawyers, by a system that's supposed to be colorblind. I was amazed by all of that injustice while we sat in a room where law students are trained into the supposedly impartial justice system. So I was overwhelmed by how he's forgiven what's been done to him. But as a Christian, I'm not allowed to forgive what's been done to him. And you're not allowed to forgive what's been done to him. And if any of us, in our comfort, tell Dewayne that he should just forgive and forget, like he'd be justified in kicking us in the teeth. Because Christianity isn't just about forgiveness, it's about justice. It's about God putting to right what is so obviously and abundantly wrong. That cross on the wall is a symbol, that things are wrong in the world. And the way that God takes care of it is by becoming flesh in Jesus Christ. And on the cross, God pours out his wrath towards sin with a capital S and all the powers and principalities that put Jesus there. God pours his wrath out on them to defeat them. And so forgiveness is appropriate in our own lives, but to impose it on someone else is wrong. Instead, what I want you all to feel listening to Brian and Dewayne in a minute is to feel outraged, to feel angry and wrathful like Amos. Because I challenge you that when you hear their story, you'll realize that an idea like God's wrath in the Old Testament that sometimes disturbs us is actually the outworking of God's love. Because a God who isn't outraged by what happened to him isn't a God that's worth being worshipped. And so the outrage you hear from the prophet Amos is good news, because it tells us that the outrage we feel is mirrored in the heart of God. So that's what I want you to take away. Brian, you want to come up? Would you all welcome Brian? I didn't say this in the first service, but when I was like sick, it was a low point too last year.
That was terrible.
So Brian took me to one of my chemo infusions, and I was simultaneously throwing up and passing out. And I have no memory of this whatsoever. And he caught me, and it was like wiping my mouth and my face. And apparently, as I slipped into unconsciousness, I said, "I would never do this for you."
Totally true.
And so that's my introduction that this isn't a unique reflection of Brian's character. That he is someone who does what he's supposed to do.
That was a fun day. Yeah, fun day.
So Brian, you were here a couple of years ago talking about your story and Dewayne's story. So let's assume that not everyone knows it, and kind of give everyone a little encapsulated version of it.
So first of all, happy Father's Day to everyone here. I know a lot of you. This is my service, so these are my people. A lot of my really good, solid friends whom I love dearly are here. Scott Mears, Carl Forty, Scott Sutton, Jim O'Farrell. A lot of you guys, Bobby Heiser, I don't want to leave you out. I still love you if I don't say your name, trust me. Adam Temple, I love you guys. I'm so thankful for the support you've given me over the last couple of years on this case, because I know I've talked about it a lot. Special shout out to my family who's here, Anna and the kids, my neighbor Abigail, and the first judge that I worked for at a law school, Judge Micheli Houghton is right there. She is a trailblazer herself. She was the first African-American woman judge on the trial court in Maryland and is now on the Court of Appeals of Maryland. So Judge, I'm so glad you're here. And honestly, but for you and the sense of justice you gave me 20 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here. So this is just as much about you as it is me, and I love you. Thank you. Okay, so in April 2003, something really bad happened. 3 men went to a check cashing store in South Houston and were going to rob it. And the robbery didn't go very well. And a police officer responded to the scene, Officer Charles Clark, a decorated 20-year veteran, and a woman, Alfredia Jones, who was working at the store at the time. They were both murdered, tragically, senselessly. I say prayers for their families. They did not need to die. In October of 2005, something equally tragic happened. An innocent man, Alfred Dewayne Brown, who's sitting right there, was convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of Officer Clark. Now, while that was happening, I was a public defender in Brooklyn, New York, learning how to be a lawyer. Judge Houghton had told me, no better way to be a lawyer than go to court and fight for your clients. So that's what I did. I represented the guilty, the extraordinarily guilty, the occasionally innocent, the misunderstood, and basically everywhere in between. And I represented probably 1,000 guys. And I began to develop sort of what Jason and I call the BS radar, in which I can spot a criminal from a mile away. I love that joke. I'm going to tell it.
So tired. Everybody laughs, though.
That's why I say it. But I began to hone those skills. And let me just tell you one thing. Every client, when I first meet them, usually tells me they're innocent. But, a lot of times I can prove it through discovery or other things that they're not. So then I'd done, as I say, about 1,000 clients. And we had our first child, Ella, who's sitting right there. And we decided to move to D.C. or Alexandria to have more of a suburban life. Worked for a large law firm in Washington. And I got a call one day from a senior partner. And he said, hey, you want to work on a death penalty case? Because I'd been a public defender, so I was really the only one that probably could. And I said, yeah, of course. Dream pro bono assignment. I fly down to Livingston, Texas. Go see on the death row a dreary prison, 60 miles north of Houston. A terrible death-filled place. Humorless. As you can tell from my jokes, I'm kind of a wise guy. So we'd pull up to the jail gates of death row, and the sheriff or the guard would say, open your hood, open your trunk, let me look at the full scan of my pockets and stuff. I said, why are you doing that? He's like, because we don't want you to bring contraband in, and we don't want you to do that. I said, okay, fine. So the next time I come, pull up, he opens the hood. I say, hey man, can you check the oil while you're in there? And, thank you, Sue. That's what he should have done, right? He didn't laugh, and so I had a hard time breaking it, but I tried to bring humor and light to this very terrible place. But the first time I see Dewayne, I feel this like shot, like right to my heart, this sort of, that truth inside of you that only you know, like when you meet your spouse for the first time, or when you, they had to be here for this one, when you hold your kid for the first time. or when you have a love for another person like Judge Otten for the first time, or when you meet Jason for the first time.
They all know what that's like.
You know that truth you feel inside, you just know? I just said, this man's innocent. And I go back into the parking lot and I throw up right next to my car. Because the gravity had set in right on me that this was going to be a task that maybe even I couldn't handle. And so I go to the airport that afternoon and I eat some of that disgusting Chinese food that smells good, and they give you the sample, but you eat it and you feel like crap afterwards, you know what I'm talking about? And I got a fortune that I have right here, and it said, "You love challenge." And I took it, I looked up, I was like, really? This is the challenge you're giving me? And so I promised them that I'd work really hard on the case. Now, so you know, never any science that implicated Dewayne, no CSI stuff you see on TV, no DNA, no fingerprints, no gun.
What was the crime?
Oh, it was a murder. No fingerprints, no DNA, no gunshot residue, nothing like that. He was basically convicted on 3 things: a witness identification, a girlfriend's testimony, which I'll explain in a moment, and a cooperator. One of the guys who actually did the shooting received a 30-year sentence to testify against Dewayne. So that's really the only 3 things that were keeping him in there. And I got the case on appeal. So this had already happened. And unringing a bell like this in Texas is nearly impossible. He stands before you, the 13th man exonerated from Texas's death row. They've executed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, some of whom have later been determined to be innocent. But he's number 13, and number 154 nationally, which also makes him a living unicorn. But all of that I thought was not possible. I thought I was taking on more than I could handle. I was biting off more than I could chew. I was simply unable to beat this death machine in Texas. And so I went to Texas many times, did old school investigations, talking to witnesses, going to court, filing motions, very aggressive, trying to uncover the truth. And so he said to me, and he'll tell you in the hallway, he wasn't there at this murder. He made a phone call to his girlfriend's residence, or girlfriend's apartment. He was living in the girlfriend's apartment, made a phone call to his girlfriend's workplace. That's where he was. And he said, maybe, hey, find that phone record. That's where I was. He had trial lawyers that weren't very good. If it were me, he wouldn't have been convicted, I don't think, but maybe. Maybe I'm not that good of a lawyer, Jason, I don't know. But I stood before this task, and I said to myself, I'm not sure I could do it. And I told Anna, I said, this guy's innocent. I'm going to get him out. And she believed in me, which I don't know why, but she did. So ask me a question now. I'm tired of talking.
All right, so I framed it by injustice that should make them angry.
Right.
So give them the grist for that.
Sure. So, yes, despite my kind, gentle demeanor, I am angry deep down about this case. The main witness against Dewayne was his girlfriend. As I said, he was at his girlfriend's home at the time of the crime, and he had called her at her work that morning. She goes to the grand jury, which is an investigative body you've probably heard from Ferguson in New York and Baltimore, that determines if there's enough evidence to go forward with a case. She goes to the grand jury and says the truth. Yeah, he was home when I left for work, and yeah, he called me that morning. The prosecutor's in a high-profile case, and look, this officer shooting is a tragic thing. Most police officers do the right thing and are not the kind of police officers that were involved in the investigation of this crime. And as I say prayers for his family. In this grand jury, she got badgered. She got threatened. She got pressured. Said, hey, if you don't tell us the truth, we're going to take your kids away. If you don't tell us that he wasn't there, we're going to put you in jail. And they backed up their threats, and they put her in jail for perjury, saying that she had lied about where Dewayne was. She sat in jail for 4 months and finally just said, fine, I'll say whatever you want me to say. And she said, nah, he wasn't there, and nah, he didn't make that call. And so, guys, the testimony in this case was from that woman, very powerful, from the guy who did was involved in the murders, and he got 30 years instead of death. And then a witness who said that she saw him from about here to the narthex, back there by that cross, maybe even a little further. So I go down to Houston, I talk to her, I say, hey, you could see him from there? She said, no, I never saw him. The police told me that they'd take my kids away if I didn't tell them what they wanted. These are her words, not mine. She had a disabled child living on government assistance. They said that they would make her life miserable if they didn't say that she saw Dewayne. So guys, what put someone on death row in Texas in this country was witness identification that was pressured, identification from his girlfriend that was pressured, and an interested defendant who got 30 years instead of death for saying that he was involved.
Any scientific evidence?
Never, never, never. Prosecutor knew this. They offered him a plea deal. I've pled out hundreds, if not thousands of people in my life. Judge Houghton has probably taken hundreds of pleas in her life. She knows. The plea in this case on a capital murder trial in Houston was 40 years. In Texas, you do half that. You could have been out in 20. Most of my clients, if they got that kind of sweetheart deal, they'd be reaching for my pen. They'd be signing, we'd be in court, be out in 20 years. Mitigate your loss. People were begging him to take it. Take this deal, take this deal. Texas is going to kill you if you don't take this deal. He said, I'm not going to sign for something I didn't do. His lawyer said to him, if I were you, I would take it. And then you said, and that shows you guys where he's innocent. But here's how it all came together. So remember, he said he made a phone call to his girlfriend's house, right? Or his girlfriend's workplace from his girlfriend's house. We subpoenaed the phone company to try to get it. They said it was long gone. It had been years since that call was purged. Subpoenaed the cops. They said they didn't have it. Subpoenaed the DA. They said they didn't have it. And so I was getting a little depressed. I would travel to Houston, to the jail to go see him, and I'd be sad. I'd cry. I'd say, man, I can't find this curse phone record. I can't find it. And this man who was in a cell, the pictures are in your pamphlets, where he could touch the walls like this with his arms, 13 feet front to back, 23 hours a day in that cell during the week, 24 hours a day on the weekends, in solitary confinement, food getting chucked at you through a pan at 2 in the morning, a place that breaks people. People hung themselves in death row, he would tell me. One guy in death row gouged his eye out and ate it. Came back from the infirmary, gouged his other eye out and ate it. It broke people. It didn't break him. The peace that he had was such that when I came to see him, and I was upset, and I was crying, and I was like, man, I'm trying so hard. He'd say, it's okay. I believe in you. The truth will come out. So the man in solitary gives me the peace to go forward. And then this guy gets cancer.
I think your timeline's messed up.
No, it's not. You got cancer, he's in prison. My life is just like absolutely terrible. And then we get a email from the prosecutor. Well, actually, I'm backing up a second. Before I got that email, I went down to Texas. And I said, here's all the reasons why my guy's innocent. All the evidence, all the things that we uncovered. Years of investigations, going down and talking to witnesses, affidavits, recantations, the whole deal. I thought we had a great set of facts. Prosecutor says to me this, she says, I say to her, he's an innocent man stands before you. She said, all you Yankee lawyers and your fancy law firms come down here and say these guys are innocent. This is Texas, we know better, good luck. And this will not be a surprise to Scott and Carl probably, but I didn't take that very kindly. And I summoned my sort of inner Arnold Schwarzenegger and I said, you don't know me, but I'll be back. My paralegal said, you said I'll be back to a prosecutor? But I did, and I did. And not that long after that, we get an email from the prosecutor saying that the homicide detective in charge of the case had recently found a box of documents on the Brown case in his personal garage. And I said, okay, why don't you send them? And you know what was in that box? Sue knows because she's been here a couple times.
It was just there on accident, right?
Talk to me afterwards about that one. This piece of paper, guys, phone record. This phone record showed that Dewayne Brown was where he was, where he said he was, where he told me he was, and where I told everybody he was, at home. One piece of paper. paper. I love this piece of paper. It is my favorite piece of paper, aside from maybe my marriage certificate, because my wife is here, I have to say that, and the birth certificate of my children. I do say that I don't know why we got this. Hand of God, I think I have to say that here, don't I? I believe it was. Dumb luck, I don't know. Whatever it was, it's here. We call the DA after we get this. We said, hey, remember that I'll be back thing? How about this? And to her credit, she agreed to a new trial. And when I spoke with you 2 years ago, I was still kind of waiting for what was going to happen. And June 8th, last year, and I say June 8th is after the date of my wedding, birth of my 3 kids, the 1986 Mets. His release on June 8th of last year was the greatest day of my life. He got out, and what he said on the courthouse steps was beautiful. He said, there's no hate in my heart for what they did to me. I'm just going to go live my life. And so his peace rubs off on me. In fact, when we do these speeches and he says, calm down, it's okay. I'm okay. And he is all right. And I love him. And my family loves him. You know, he's here. We did some speeches this week, and I want to make sure we shared our story with you here. And I said, hey, you're going to be in town. Let's have a party. I'll buy you a steak. I'll buy you seafood. I'll buy you whatever you want for your anniversary. Because your 1-year anniversary, it's a great thing. He said, no, I'm okay. Let's just do something a little more low-key. You think Anna can make me gumbo? And she took a day off last Friday, and she made seafood gumbo. And it's really good. How was it? Was it all right?
Yes, it was.
There's still some left over if y'all want to come over afterwards.
Dewayne, would you come up? Would you welcome Dewayne up?
And I just got nervous. Hey, everybody.
All right, so Dewayne, when we talked the last time, one of the questions I asked you was how long it took you to trust him.
3 years.
Why?
Thought he's one of those lawyers that just sent me to death row. Not knowing that he was a good guy, but I see why he's a good guy, and I got him.
So he talk about the sense of peace that you have that Brian describes.
Yes, sometimes I can't explain it. I just don't look back at the past. It happened. It's nothing can be changed about it, but I don't even think about it or worry about it. I just kind of move forward with my life. Just live day by day and be happy to go to work every day.
What are you doing right now?
Railroad.
So Jason, we were at a speech in front of 400 people on Thursday, and one of the people asked how he keeps his peace, or kept his peace while he was in there. And he said something so brilliant that, like, I speak all this time for an hour, and everyone's like, yeah, good for you, but then they all want to hear from him. He said, so how did you keep your peace, and what'd you say?
My body was locked up, but my mind wasn't, so I was constantly not worried about where I was at or what I was doing. I was just, my body was there, but I was just basically thinking about how to teach myself how to read, how to draw. I was keeping myself busy doing yoga, stuff that in that nature, but I wasn't trying to do anything negative to anybody.
You know, we have a yoga class here if you'd like to be a guest teacher.
But that was a beautiful, I couldn't believe it. Like, I speak for an hour, and he encapsulates it into one sentence. So I'm so proud of him for coming up here and talking in front of people.
So you have a daughter?
Yes.
What's her name?
Kiara.
And she's how old?
16.
And you were on death row for how long?
10 years.
Yeah, in jail
Total of
totally, right, 12 years.
Yeah.
So I think there's a picture in your program of you hugging her for the first time
Yes.
when you got out.
Last time I touched her, she was 2 years old, and the last time I touched her was, she was 15 at the time.
So, Brian, I read a draft of your book that was in urgent need of editing.
That's nice.
It's obviously a lot thinner now than it was the first time.
Well, I'll tell you this, that you read that book. My wife, who I love dearly, has still not read that book. So maybe when it comes out, she'll read it. Huh?
But at least in the draft, one of my takeaways is that it's not just the story of you, and it's not just the story of Dewayne, it's not just the story of the justice system. It's the story of the church with a capital C, and it's a story of this congregation.
Yep.
So just kind of flesh that out for people.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a Catholic church, very strict Catholic church, where if I went every Sunday and did everything right, if I said all the things the right way, and all the intercessions and the Our Father, I got $1. So I really wanted that $1 because a can of root beer cost $1. And so I was focused. But I didn't realize at the time, and now that was shaping me, informing me as I was going every Sunday. Grew up in a Franciscan parish in northern New Jersey where I was taught about love and service to others and how that was what it's all about. We have a sign in our house from the prayer of St. Francis which says, "For it is in the giving that we receive." And guys, it is in my giving of my time and my effort and my love to him that I receive. I don't want anything back. I mean, Anna doesn't like me to say it, but the proceeds from the book are going away. They're going to him. They're going to him. They're going somewhere else. It is the giving of my time that I received him being here. And this guy, as you all know, and he'll tell you, the smartest theologian on the planet, helped me. And this church helped me. Because it's not an easy story to hear and not an easy story to believe in. Most people think if it's not a DNA case, it's impossible to sort of talk about. But we proved it. But I was depressed a lot. I'd sit in those pews right there. You're going to get me again. So it's emotional for me to be here because I'd sit in those pews and pray for this man to be here. And I pray for strength. And I pray for my wife to tolerate me for another day. And you helped me. You've taught me so much in the last several years I've been here. You've taught me more about God and things that sometimes you say things, I don't even understand them. But I know you know what you're talking about. So, yeah, shaped by that, but really sort of became who I am in the church because of you. So I thank you. And I'm so glad that the cancer's gone because...
Well, I wasn't fishing for compliments. So like last month or so, we were trying to raise money for this building. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted you guys here then because what I wanted to be able to show people was what we do in here isn't just about praying, isn't just about singing, isn't just about preaching. It's about forming our character so that when someone like you comes into our life, we can respond just out of habit because we've been shaped in that direction. So I really wanted you as a sermon illustration, but you weren't here then, you're here now.
Okay.
But it's good too because 2 years ago, it was Father's Day, and Brian was up here with me, and he had the phone record, so we knew that you were innocent. But Brian thought that the state of Texas was simply going to retry you. And so after the sermon, we prayed for you and for your family and your daughter and for your release. And now here it's Father's Day 2 years later, and you're here.
Wow.
So So where are you now?
Happy.
I mean, what are you guys doing? Like, what's next for him?
We're eating gumbo and going to the movies and hanging out and having a good time. Now, I mean, what's great about this is we do these speeches in front of all these people, and then we go about our lives. I'm going to work tomorrow. He's going to work tomorrow. We text. We talk. We talk on all the holidays, the anniversaries. I love the man. You may see from the cover of your program, my publisher requires me to say this, that I've written a book, and it's available on Amazon.
And if you pre-order it, it will make it more likely that other people will see it. So it's in the
right. So it comes out.
It's in the story's interest for them to
so
pre-order.
as I make $1 a book, so I will give you the $1 back. Okay, it's not about the story. In fact, someone at the 8:30 service came up to me afterward and says, "You have changed my mind about the death penalty," and so that was enough for me. I could have gone home after that. So please, and the Amazon is making me mad because they went from $22 to $15. So you can get my story for $15 low. I will give it to lawyers, give it to practicing lawyers, give it to your family, give it to people who care about justice, and religion, and grace, and love, and doing something for others. And I'll sign it. And we're going to go on speaking tours then in October. There's film interest. Jason is going to be in it as an extra, as like a death row inmate, you know. All buffed up with tattoos, you know. I got you this time.
So I just came back from a church conference, and Christians have this unique ability to debate social issues into the wee hours of the morning. But capital punishment is something that the Christian church across denominations has always been against. And the reason it's against is a very conservative one, because we're people who believe in the power of sin, not just in individual lives, but in institutions. And so we know that no institution can ever absolutely get something correct. And that means that a final sort of punishment for we worship a guy who was falsely accused, for crying out, so a final sort of punishment is something that Christians can't abide. And so really, I want you to leave here grateful, but also afflicted that Dewayne is not the only one in Dewayne's story, that there are others like him out there. And I want you to share this story, to buy it and share it with others, sort of Amazon evangelism, because this is it's a message that the church, we get so preoccupied with other issues that we have kind of neglected this one. And
Thank you, Jason.
Will you thank them?
You guys can give me a hug.